Hi, everyone. I am Heather Vickery, and I'm an LGBTQ entrepreneur.
Hello, Out Bosses. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to this week's episode of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. On this week's episode, I am super happy to be welcoming back to the show Heather Vickery. As many of you know, Heather was first interviewed on our episode 27 all the way back 2 years ago during Pride Month. So Heather, welcome back to the show. We are super excited to have you back.
I can't believe it's been that long. I'm excited to be back.
I know,
right? We talk enough that I don't feel like it's been that long.
I know. I was looking back through the show notes. I was like, okay, I know this was a while ago, but then I was like, whoa, episode 27. So you can see my own growth as probably a podcast host since then, many episodes later. But it's really exciting to have you back on the show. And for those folks who are tuning in who aren't familiar with the awesomeness of Heather, I want to share with you a little bit about her background, and then we'll just jump into the questions. So Heather is a success coach and fellow podcaster with over 20 years of experience as an entrepreneur. That is amazing. And she helps her clients build better business strategies that elevate their lives and businesses to new levels of success. She runs a series of workshops and is a public speaker where she trains other entrepreneurs on getting to the empowering side of fear, creating balance, time management, as well as countless systems, strategies, and boundaries. So working with Heather inspires people to say, so what? Do it scared. I love that mantra. And just to take real action towards their dreams. So Heather, on this episode, I was just thinking we could talk a little bit about how your business has evolved. Definitely want to talk about the Brave Files, which is your podcast. And definitely, because you are a coach, maybe we can get some free coaching here around some mindset hacks that we can share with the audience. So this has been 2 years since we last chatted. Why don't we start with, you did launch your podcast, The Brave Files. So I'm curious, how has this helped your business evolve? And how has it helped you evolve as a person? Because that's
such a great question, Rhodes.
Oh, thank you.
So my podcast is not a business podcast, although it is deeply rooted in both my personal and professional core values. So the show, as you mentioned, is called The Brave Files. And I interview people who have stepped out of fear and into bravery to live courageous lives. The through line is that when we choose bravely, our lives are enriched and the folks around us, their lives are enriched, and we have more courage and confidence to go and do bigger, more brave things, right? So that's what I do as a coach, but I tell the stories, I interview people, and you were one of my wonderful interviews. Now I feel bad. I don't know what episode that is.
Oh,
I can
thank you.
Sneak in and pick it up.
We'll have it in the show
figure
notes.
It out.
Thank you.
I'll figure it out before we go. But people, like you, but every walk of life, every type of story, there are a million different ways to be brave. So I started the podcast as a passion project, and I'm only just slowly starting to build it into my business platform, starting to promote some of my own products on the show. People have been on me for a while to do that, but I wanted to have a comfort level and an audience and things before I threw all of that in. And I love it. So currently the podcast is not making me money, but what it is doing is building brand awareness and giving me a bigger platform to reach a larger audience. And people really seem to be responding to it.
Yeah, it's so impressive, the systems you have in place to support the podcast. As someone who's gone through as an interviewee, it was just such an awesome experience. I was like, I learned a lot as a podcast host as well. I think you're really crushing it there. And to me, it makes sense, the content. I mean, the title itself, The Brave Files, a lot of, at least my understanding of part of the coaching that you do is really helping your business clients identify the fears or the limiting beliefs that hold them back, and maybe
Absolutely.
to make friends with that, but to kind of lean into the experiences where they have stood up and they have demonstrated traits of being a brave person and just leveraging that, right?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I think is really hard for people to understand, but once they do, there's a freedom that comes with it, is that brave is better than fearless. We are not trying to get you to not have fear. Fear is a natural human reaction. The only people that I've ever known that are actually fearless are like toddlers and sociopaths.
Yeah.
We need fear. It informs us, right? But it either owns you and shuts you down, or it empowers you. And so it's what you do with that fear and how you let that then push you forward that really matters. So I definitely do that with my clients. A lot of that is confidence and trust. We do this exercise. I do it all the time. And it's one of my favorites. And I even do it with myself is when there is something that's literally stopping you, I'll say, what's the worst thing that could happen? And folks will come up with what it is. And we'll be serious, like, really, could you lose your job? Could somebody die? Like, what is the worst thing that could happen? Usually it's not that extreme. And then we'll say, what's the best thing that can happen? And once you've looked at those two things dead on, you can say, okay, it's worth the risk. I'm willing to try it because the worst thing's really not that bad.
Yeah, I love that exercise. And I've tried to embrace that and go there. And it's work. It's work to kind of peel back those layers.
Totally.
But when you go back to like what that core is, oftentimes for me, it's like, oh, I'm afraid to fail. Well, that's okay. I mean, like that's the foundation of what gets you to where you want to be, right? Is like kind of learning from those lessons.
Absolutely.
I love that.
I find that most people are more afraid to succeed than they are to fail.
Yeah, I think that's true. You know, and kind of the work that I do, I always push people to imagine what's the workplace culture that you want to show up to every day. And it's amazing that people can't name that. They can't name what it looks like. They can't name how they would be treated and respected. I just think that maybe as a culture, we have a deficit of dreaming big and thinking about the successes that we want to see or kind of the workplaces that we want to build. And those are the exercises, you know, I think that there's a lot of opportunity there, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that you said that. So I have an accountability system. I'm an accountability partner, several accountability systems. And that's, I think, a really important part of being successful personally and professionally. But my accountability partner asked me just yesterday, totally out of the blue, because this isn't something we do every week. He said, let's imagine it's April 1st, 2020, and it has been the best year of your life. What happened? Yes. And I was able to do this visualization exercise, which leads to a manifestation exercise. And also, I wasn't sure. Which is funny because I do this work. I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know what happened. It was the best year ever. What does that look like? That now I have a more clear picture of what I want to be working towards, which is exciting.
Yes, I agree with that. I think it's like if you had a blank canvas and you had paints in front of you, you can do anything with that, right? And I think sometimes that the possibilities overwhelm people, right?
The possibilities do overwhelm, but you tapped into something. I don't even know if you meant to tap into it, but because of the work that I do, when people look at a blank canvas or a blank screen, or they're just unsure because there are too many options, not only is there too much to choose from, but they also look at it and say, but I don't know how to paint. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's not so much that they don't know what they want to do, it's that they don't think they know how to do it.
Yes.
And my mentor always says to me, there's no such thing as I don't know how. It just means your want to is not cranked up high enough. When you want to, you figure out how. But that open blank slate more internalizes as a limiting voice where people say, but I don't know how to do that.
Right.
I don't know how to build that.
Yes. I'm pretty sure we're in alignment with this, but just as being human beings, we are kind of co-creating what we want, right? So that gives us like the agency to be artists and however we define that. But there's so much kind of programming that we have to kind of deprogram, I guess, in some ways because of those voices, right? The voices that say, you can't draw or you can't do this. And so I think we carry that into the bigger kind of cloud of creativity where it's like, well, if I can't paint and I can't sing and I can't dream big, then I'm just going to do the things that people tell me what my narrative is or what I can do, right? And that's so limiting because it just puts us in a box, right? It's
so limiting. But, I love one of my favorite quotes is a Vincent Van Gogh quote that says, if the voice inside you says you cannot paint, then by all means paint and the voice will be silenced.
Love it. Yes, this is why you're on the show. This is so inspiring. I love that.
So the thing is, you may look at a blank canvas, everybody out there who's listening, and you may say, not only do I not know what I want to do with it, I don't know how to do anything with it. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's right there. You just have to do some deep reflective work about what actually excites you and what motivates you and what you want the service that you provide to be. Like what kind of change do you want to make? Give me a call. We can figure it out. Yes, you do.
So one of the things that you do, and I don't know if this is your workshop, I know that I've seen it in your social media, which you're crushing, and that is this idea of going from chaos to clarity. And I think
Yeah.
that speaks to this blank canvas. Like if we're overwhelmed with all the options, we live in this culture
Uh-huh.
where everything is coming at us all the time. There's tons of information. How do we gain clarity from that? So can you talk a little bit more about where that comes from in your work and how you use that with the folks that you coach?
Sure. So Chaos to Clarity is actually the name of my signature audio course, which just so happens is available right now. I only open the doors twice a year to this course. And for those of you listening, you could go right now and register for one of those very limited spaces. But the idea is that we take people from this space of unknowing and we peel back the layers. So this course in particular is audio based. It comes with 16 audio lessons, and then we have live group coaching program once a week for 4 weeks where we can work through it and all of that fun stuff. But you can't build a roadmap if you don't know where you want to go. So the first part of taking yourself from chaos to clarity is fully identifying what is in your way. What are the stories you tell yourself that aren't true? Who is it that you would need to be, that you would want to be to achieve your goals? I love that question. Who do you need to be to step up into your life the way you want to? Not what do you need to do, but who do you need to be? Who do you want to be? We spend time in that space. And then once we've sort of got people in, when you believe yourself, you believe in your power and your capability and the fact that you can create this change, then we start talking about tactical things. Look, I am a type A. I love systems. I love strategies. I love boundaries. I really love boundaries. It's my favorite topic. But you can't really implement any of those things unless you've bought in. And so it's sort of a 2-part process. And I find that the first half of any, if it's a one-on-one coaching or if it's a workshop or if it's my signature course, no matter what it is I'm doing, you get the resistance for things like, you can really manage your time better if you build out a daily schedule. And people go, oh, and they start to shake and they think, oh, I'll lose all my creativity and you're going to put me on a leash and tether me. But what happens then if you do that properly is it actually gives you so much more freedom and so much more self-confidence. And you have quicker customer service and you work with your coworkers better, like all of these awesome things, but you're not willing to try it until you believe it. Mm-hmm. It just takes a while to get there.
Yeah. I like that you broke that down for us. It reminded me of something else that I think I saw from the work that you do. And it's more about kind of this idea of time. Of like, we have no time. And I have no time to do this thing. And this is where I want to go. And I think you had said something. It's like, it's not about your time. It's about the priorities that you make.
That's right.
How do you coach people through that?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first thing I ask anybody to do is start to pay attention to how they're spending their time. I find that being aware will create change before you have even tried to implement anything. So let's say, for example, you start to track how often I like to use the term squirrel. You're supposed to be working on something specific, but you check an email or you hear a ding on your phone or what's happening on Facebook. Let me scroll through Instagram. If you start to become aware of how often you get yourself off track, you will write that before you do anything else. So those of you listening, there's your free coaching for the day. Start paying attention to that. I promise you will immediately start to see some changes because we are sort of humiliated by ourselves. Why can I not just sit for an hour and write or stay focused on this thing? That's the first thing. And once people are aware of how they're spending their time, then we talk about, well, how do you want to be spending your time? So for many of my clients, and for me personally, I would rather work really hard for 4 or 5 hours and then have 3 hours of time to myself to read or take a walk or hang out with my kids or cook or whatever, right? Binge on Netflix. In order to do that, then I stop multitasking, because if you're still out there multitasking, you are screwing yourself left and right. Mm-hmm. Sorry for the vulgar language, but it's the truth. Mm-hmm. You cannot do anything really well if you're doing something else at the same time.
Yes.
It's not possible. Mm-hmm. So you stop multitasking and then you set time limits for yourself. I'm going to work on this project for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour or whatever you think you can handle without taking a break and squirreling. And then build in. I'm going to scroll through Instagram after this, or I'm going to check my email or whatever it is. Build those things in, give yourself permission for them to be okay. And you will be so much more productive. You will actually find more time in your day, even though that doesn't exist. But it's not how many hours there are. It's how you manage your time and what your priorities are, just like you said.
Yeah, I think the thing that came up for me, well, actually two things, was the acronym FOCUS, so finish one course until successful, which I kind of love that, because when I catch myself doing all of the things at once, I'm like, okay, I need to walk away from this computer. I need to take a break and then come back and just finish this one thing that's been on my to-do list for too long. And then it reminded me of this quantum physics experiment. So this is kind of my woo side. Meeting science, right? But it's like that kind of two-slit experiment where they basically looked at these teeny tiny particles, and when they were focusing on the particles, it actually changed the nature of the particle itself. When they didn't, it did things as expected, So it's kind of, there's some magic to, really honing in on the thing that you want to get done. And when you do, you get the results you want, right? And
what's interesting about that, though, is maybe there's this one big task, like you mentioned, this thing that's been on your to-do list forever. There's a reason you're avoiding it. I work with people to figure out why. Why do I not want to do this? What's the block on it? But when it comes to scheduling, here's a secret. It doesn't matter what you put first. It doesn't matter. You just need a place to start. When you don't have a system in place, a schedule, and maybe it's a to-do list, but I always say to take your to-do list further and put times to it. So it's not just, what am I going to start with? When you sit down at your desk, you know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And that is a really powerful change, because we spend so much time feeling overwhelmed because there's so much to do and we just don't know where to start. It doesn't matter. Just tell yourself where you're going to start and go for it.
Yeah. And there's some magic to, I will finish this thing in X amount of time, because there's some kind of name to this principle, but it's like if you have 3 hours, you will find ways to fill up those 3 hours, sometimes with kind of multitasking. And then if you're just like, the one thing that I need to get done, this is going to happen now, and all of the distractions, just kind of turn those off. When we were scheduling you for the show, a couple of folks in the studio were like, okay, ask Heather around how she measures her success and her impact with her clients. I was like, oh, that's a really good question. And knowing that you're type A like me, you like the systems and you like to measure things. So I'm just kind of curious, how do you measure success when you work with a client over a period of time?
Well, I love that question, actually. And what I would tell my clients to do to measure success is probably what I do. So we don't always practice what we preach. To me, success is not about how much money you make. It's about the way you feel at the end of the day, the end of the week, end of the month, end of the year. How do I feel? Did I do what I said I was going to do? Am I happy with the results of that? And so I measure success by seeing my clients flourish, by knowing that they have cracked through and that they're doing the things that they want to be doing. It's funny, I'm looking up right now. My goal sheet for the year is I've picked, so how many interviews, podcasts like this do I want to be on? How many speaking engagements do I want to have? How many people have I taken through the Chaos to Clarity course? And how many one-on-one coaching clients I've booked? And I color in the shape. And so I don't focus on money, because money is a byproduct of service. I focus on serving people and helping people and getting my message out. And so I look very closely at that, and I can go, I'm already, here we are. It's the very end of March, and I'm halfway to my goal on bringing in new one-on-one coaching clients for the year. That feels pretty great.
Yeah.
And the more you can celebrate, I also mark my successes with celebration, which I am a big fan of. The more you can celebrate and honor that, the more energy you have to move towards future goals and successes.
Yes, I love everything that you said. And I think on the piece of celebration, that is so important. For me, coming from an activist background where it's like you get a victory on a campaign, it's like, all right, well, now here's the next thing. And it's like you go from one thing to the next to the next. And I see that in the world of entrepreneurship, where we set the goal and then all of a sudden we move the goalpost of like, oh, we got that thing, like what you just said.
Okay.
You're halfway to the number of one-on-one clients you want for the year. And you're probably, I don't know, for me, I'd be like, oh, well, maybe I underestimated that goal. And so you kind of move it. I mean, I know I do this all the time. So I love what you're saying about if you get the thing.
I don't.
Yes, that's good. That's good.
I don't. There are other things I add in. I'm working on 2 different books right now. I just published my first one. And I know, I do the work, and this is what I help clients do as well. I do the work in advance to figure out how much time do I actually have in order to fully serve everybody, to be there for myself, to be there for my partner, to be there for my clients and my kids, what do I actually have to give before there's not enough of me to go around? If I do these things, I'll reach this certain income level that's important to me. So rather than adding on, like for one-on-one coaching, that's a really easy one. I know how many one-on-one coaching hours I can spend in a week. And beyond that, it's past my max capacity. So if I have 6 enrolled one-on-one clients at a time and they roll in and out, right? That's all I can do. So once those are full, then I can maybe set different goals for myself. I can work on whatever the next book is, the next project, whatever fun thing that I want to try next. But yes, entrepreneurs are always moving the goalpost. And I hate to see people doing that. Not to mean that you shouldn't set new, next, bigger goals, because you should do that. But stop to say, wow, I did this thing really well. I crushed this thing. I am so proud of myself. For me, it's a dance party. It's always a dance party.
Yes.
It usually involves pink. I play pink and I
Good
literally
choice.
dance like a freak. Yeah, no joke.
Yeah.
I kind of scream and screech a little. I typically will text or shout out to my partner and say, I did this thing and it's so exciting. It doesn't have to be big. I'm not talking about throwing big parties. You can do anything you want. You can go on Facebook Live and say, guess what I just did?
Yeah.
Or do it personally. It can involve other people. It doesn't have to cost money, but stop and give yourself credit for the things that you're working hard for.
Yeah.
That will change everything. It
Yeah.
will change your mindset and your energy and how you step into the spaces around you.
I love that. It's kind of the success when you meet the goal. It's the discipline to not move the goalpost. And something that you said, and I don't know, I mean, correct me if I'm off, but I like this idea of you meet the goal and then you have this extra window of time. That's your creative space. Like you can dream about writing books, or you can hang out with your kids, or spend time with your partner, but it's like you've kind of earned that time back for yourself in a way to just kind of recharge a little bit before you kind of suffer from burnout like so many of us do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, that isn't to say there isn't space to say, well, maybe I set that bar too low, but that's a negative mindset. If you set the bar the way you should have set the bar, not only are you achieving this goal, then you're receiving a financial reward, and you can see what that is, right? Did you make the money you wanted to make? Well, then you didn't set the bar too low, but then next time you can raise it, right?
Yep.
So instead of feeling bad that maybe you didn't push yourself hard enough this time, feel good that you completed and accomplished what you set forth to do, and then raise it a little bit the next time.
Yeah. And that's the importance of, those kind of realistic and aggressive goals, so that when you do reach it, you're like, yes, I did that. And there's that sense of fulfillment. Yeah, I like your approach to this. Okay, so I have more questions, but we're going to go to a quick sponsorship break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about all the great work that you're up to. Hey, Outbosses, Rhodes Perry here. As you all know, part of my passion for this podcast is to empower you and fellow LGBT entrepreneurs to cultivate a feeling of purpose and belonging in your business. To know that you can show up and be the most authentic version of yourself. Purpose, belonging, and workplace culture are concepts I take seriously in my own consulting business. In fact, I'm on a mission to empower leaders just like you and those on their way to joining us to cultivate cultures of belonging. In my upcoming book, Belonging at Work, I share some of my personal struggles of coming out as a trans guy in the workplace and how I leverage this experience as one of my business superpowers. Now, I'm on a mission to support you in taking simple actions that will make a world of difference for anyone who has ever felt as if they needed to hide important aspects of themselves on the job. When you commit to purchasing a special, limited edition copy of the book, a portion of your purchase will support expanding workplace opportunities for fellow transgender and non-binary people. An added bonus, your story about what it means to belong at work will be featured on the book's website to inspire others. You're ready to belong at work now. To learn more, visit rhodesonamazon.com or text 444-999 and type the word belong. Again, that's rhodesonamazon.com or text 444-999 and type belong. Okay, so Heather, this is so good. I'm really enjoying this conversation. So I have to collect my thoughts here, but I wanted to kind of switch over and talk to you a little bit about your new journal that you put out. So you are the author of the Gratitude Journal, which is entitled Shift Your Focus. and you are a professional speaker. A question that I like to ask folks who are both kind of authors and speakers is to find out, do you identify as someone who is a writer who speaks, or are you someone who is a speaker who writes? And if you can talk a little bit more about why you identify.
What a great
Yeah.
question.
Thank you.
Probably a speaker who writes, although I've always been a writer. I have an English creative writing degree and theater double major from college. But speaking there's the theater. It all came together. It's probably pretty level for me, but I was speaking before I published. So we'll go that route.
Okay. So, all right. So that's super helpful. So take us back to that first professional speaking gig that you got, where you are getting paid to be in front of an audience who wants to get lots of value from you. So what was that? What was going through your mind? And what might be some guidance that you can give to our audience for folks who are just thinking about getting started?
Well, I have to say this, that your first question was when you first spoke to a public audience, and then you followed it up with saying you're getting paid to be on stage. Let me be very transparent here. When I was first speaking to audiences, they were not paying me to do that. That is the case now, but it didn't start out that way. So, there are a lot of ways to get paid. And sometimes experience is a way to get paid. And sometimes connecting and talking to other people is a way to get paid. So I do one pro bono speaking gig a year. And once it's gone, then it's gone. So I still do them for the right person. I think that that's pretty important to say. I love it. I never needed to be a drug addict because all I needed to do was get on stage and my adrenaline just took me all the way.
Wow.
You can absolutely tell when you're in the groove and when people are responding. I tend to be an interaction presenter and speaker. I don't just talk at people. I get them involved. I look for head nods. I ask people of the audience to participate and share their thoughts. I think that when you can see the people around you having an experience, you begin to have an experience. And I consider myself an experiential speaker. Folks don't want a transaction. They want an interaction. And this is how I've started to really approach every element of my business. But that really is important. And people have always known that for speaking, but nobody wants you to get up there and just talk at them. Nobody likes that. So it has to feel like an experience. There has to be some emotion and human connection to it. I don't know if that answered your original question, but yeah, I love being on stage.
No, that was great. It just got me to think, I completely agree with that. I think it's such an art if you say you're coming in for a keynote speech, right? I mean, it is, you have the stage and there are people seated in kind of the 20th century classroom where they're all waiting for you to have that kind of transactional, here's what I know, see you later. And I think it's such an art when you are in that space, for me as a participant, and there is a speaker who is guiding you through some kind of empathy building exercise where even though, they're speaking from the stage, you're not in small groups, it's still getting your brain engaged with the content in such a really interesting way. So I think that going back to that artist analogy, that is a true art. And it sounds like that's kind of your approach to really bringing the audience in. So kind of like on this, when you're up on stage and you're connecting with an audience, how does that link then to your coaching? How has that changed the way that you do your business? And I guess how has it impacted your focus as a business owner who's also doing podcasting? If there is a connection, I'm not sure if there is.
I think that's interesting. I would say that how I coach informs how I speak more than the other way around.
Yeah.
I take my coaching experience and alter it to fit on the stage and to talk to larger crowds. What I help people do is find their own empowerment, figure out what they really want, why they don't have it, and how they're going to get there. And we take that into a large crowd and we make it achievable and accessible for everybody. As a podcaster, such an interesting question. Maybe a little more relaxed, right? Because I'm comfortable being on stage. I'm comfortable talking to a large group of people. And I don't want to mislead it. It's not to say I don't get nervous, but I get a little more excited than nervous. And maybe those belly flops are happening as I'm walking up. But then once I'm up there, I'm cool, right? And there's some people are really nervous about talking on radio or podcasts. And I have a lot of comfort there. Where I have problems and still have problems is on video. I can stand in front of people in a crowd with no problem, but you put that camera right in my face, just me and the camera, it's a hot mess. I do it. I challenge myself to do it, but it's really hard for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's so interesting because here we are, we're having a podcast. The only thing that's missing is the visual, right? I guess maybe it's just exposure therapy. It feels like a phone call, right? For people who still remember talking on the phone versus texting at one another. But like, like there's something familiar.
The kids are doing it again.
They are. Okay, they're going back. Yeah. They're like, we're going to go back old school. So yeah, that's good.
My daughter was on the phone for 3 hours the other day. I was like, homework.
Okay, all right. Yeah, homework for sure. But that also gives me hope in humanity where it's like, okay, we haven't lost the art of conversation. But there's something about that video, right? And it's the interesting thing as a consumer of kind of, I don't know, online content. I love video. I love getting the sense of, I don't know, if I'm watching a motivational speaker, I like seeing them in action. So I definitely, personally recognize the importance of it. When I'm doing it, I feel similar. It's like, oh, this lighting and and oh my gosh, there's all these wrinkles, and like you can get pretty self-critical. And then I try to get in the shoes of people that I can help. Yeah. And then the feedback, the positive feedback where people are like, yeah, that was great. We want more. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I guess I got to keep doing this.
People love feedback. There's nothing wrong with wanting somebody to tell you they think you've done a good job.
Yeah.
The only time it's an issue is when that's the only thing that counts.
Yeah, I know. Yes.
Because you have to think you did a good job. You have to feel good about it. If you don't, they can tell you did a good job until their face turns blue and you're not going to internalize that.
Totally.
Yes. That's such an important thing for people to realize.
Yes. This is why you're a good coach. So, yeah, I mean, pointing that out. And it's true. It's true. I mean, you've got to feel it at your core. Full disclosure for folks who tune into this show. I mean, one of the big things for me of getting started in podcasting was just to like be comfortable with hearing my recorded voice. And I feel like I've said that before, but I used to listen to my recorded voice and just be like, that's what I sound like, So,
I have an interesting story around that. Hopefully he wouldn't kill me for saying this. My first podcast guest was a man named Brian Johnson, and he is the CEO of Equality Illinois. And he's a good friend of mine. And I asked him directly, I said, look, I'm launching this podcast. Will you be my first guest? And he said yes. And then he listened to it. He was very nervous to listen to it, but he shared with me afterwards. And it's a really, the audio quality sucks. So if you're going to go listen to it, lower your expectations for sound quality, but the content is fantastic.
Yes.
But he said, I used to hate this. I think this crowd will appreciate this. I used to hate listening to my voice because I thought I sounded so gay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I thought, everyone's going to hear that and they're going to think I sound so gay. And he goes, now I love hearing my voice because I sound so gay.
Yes.
Yes. He's like, what's wrong with sounding gay? Mm-hmm. Nothing's wrong with it. This is who I am. This is how I speak. And I have learned to love the way that I sound. But, that's a life progress. That's something you have to work your way towards. And I really admired that he not only had gone through that transformation, but that he acknowledged it and spoke to it. And it gives everybody else permission. If you don't like the way it sounds right now, it's okay.
Yes.
You'll get there.
Yes.
You can learn to love it.
Yeah, yeah. So two things. One, the sound quality as a new podcaster, I feel like that's a rite of passage for all of us. So we have to embrace it. Like, look at how far we've come. I certainly have been there. And then on the guests that you had, I feel like I've had several guests who have said that as gay men and really owning the voice that they have, and sharing that. And I think that's totally relevant for this podcast. You have one voice, that's your voice. And I know for myself, it's been a journey.
Absolutely.
And I kind of love it now, but it's taken a while, So it's...
Okay, totally aside. Again, interesting. I listened to a podcast episode yesterday. I don't remember. It might have been on NPR, where they are working to do voice cue. Have you heard this? AI?
No.
So right now, you go to your Google Home or your Alexa or whatever it is, and you either have a choice of a male voice or a female voice, and they're developing voice cue, which is a gender neutral voice. And they've combined hundreds of different voices together to get the most gender neutral voice they can get. Cool. So that, right. And they talk about, I thought it was so fascinating. They talk about how we have come to expect a male voice in certain situations or a female voice in certain situations, and how when that's not the voice you get, it changes your perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yes.
Totally random.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. This is, you're speaking my language here. It's like gender and its interesting ways of how it shows up in technology. So that's pretty cool. I will definitely check that out after the show and probably add this into the show notes just for anyone who's curious. Okay, so since the last time we talked, I've added this question, and I'm bummed that I didn't ask you the first time, which is all about kind of for members of the rainbow family, recognizing that we have some pretty unique lived experiences. I often refer to coming out as probably the most recognized, that is pretty unique for us. And so I'm curious how you see your own experiences as being a part of the rainbow family, as helping you be a compelling business owner, compelling podcaster, professional speaker, just kind of more specifically thinking about your own superpowers that you've gained from being a part of this awesome LGBT community. How has it helped you in business, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
This is really interesting that you've brought this up now, because I was actually thinking about this, not necessarily as it relates to business, but earlier today. I have been doing a tremendous amount of work lately in understanding race and my role in racism and my role as a white woman and privilege and fragility and all of these things, right? Mm-hmm. And it occurred to me that my ability to do that work came from coming out.
Yeah.
When my knowledge of what an entire community of people had been going through, while I was certainly always inclusive and thought I was progressive for LGBTQ issues, I wasn't until I came out and I was part of the community. And then I really had a deeper understanding of what happens and how to support people and how to move things forward. And I've been able to take that understanding. It's helped me develop empathy and sympathy and how to converse in a way that pushes people but doesn't scare them or harm them, and apply that in a lot of different situations. It works with my one-on-one clients. It works when I'm on stage. It changes my voice when I'm interviewing. It changes my voice when I'm writing, and it allows me to be a better ally to other minority groups.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so interesting, the piece around empathy. So many guests, when I've asked this question, that's one of the first things that comes up. And I think especially as I am a white person, so as a white person who's a member of the LGBT family, I certainly have experienced microaggressions, discrimination, oppression, right? And I think the empathy that my lived experiences from that definitely gives me more empathy, because I certainly don't know the experiences of other folks. But
yet at the same time, it's allowed me, I do have more empathy and I have more understanding, but I'm also more willing to say, which maybe this isn't across the board, for me personally, I can see where you're coming from, but I'll never truly know what it's like to be a Black man or a Black woman or a Black non-binary person, right? I won't ever know that. I will not ever know what it's like to be Muslim or Middle Eastern. I will not have your lived experiences.
Yes.
I can honor your lived experiences, and I can help share your lived experiences, and I can work to make the quality of your life, more enjoyable from where I sit. But now I can say, no, you don't know what it's like. You can't tell me what it's like. You can try to be empathetic and understanding. I can't stand it when people come in and say, oh, I know exactly what it's like. No, you don't.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you. I feel really blessed to be a trans bisexual person, just like, okay, I definitely know what those experiences are.
And I will never know what that's like.
Totally. Right. But it's like the ability, because you have felt different, there's more of a willingness to connect around similar situations that are totally different, but it's still kind of, it's the static from oppression, right? And being oppressed by a dominant group, and that dominant group may look different for me than for you, but we can talk about what that looks like. And also going back to what you were talking about in the beginning of this interview, dream of a world where we're building a more just world, and it will take all of us, and we have different ideas of how to get there, right? But building coalition is really, really important, and I love your responses.
It is, and it's funny. I have this great story from earlier this year that I think ties in really nicely. My children go to a progressive education school, which is, there are no grades, there's no standardized testing. It's project-based, student-led, social emotional learning that's rooted in social justice. So on the first day of third grade, my daughter's teacher there were only 12 kids in the class. They were supposed to come up with a math problem And the answer had to be the day of the month, right? So they had to create their own math problem, and they all were then to get the same answer. And they went around the room to share their strategies. Well, all 12 of them had used a different problem to get to the same result.
Yep.
Every person solved this problem differently. And the teacher said, this is a group of 8 and 9-year-olds. Okay, so if all of you did a different problem and got the same result, what does that teach you? And the third grader said that there are lots of ways to solve a problem.
Yes. the teacher should get the Teacher of the Year award.
She's awesome.
Yes.
She's Miss Angela. You should listen to this. You are awesome.
Yes.
But I tell that story a lot. I've been telling that one from the stage. We are so convinced that there's a right and wrong way to do everything. And there isn't. There's just is not one way to get things done. There are lots of ways. And you may process differently than me. You may think different things. You learn differently. All of that. We can honor all of those differences. So, to tie it all back together, as far as what Coming Out taught me and the conversations that we just had, I take that into coaching because it allows me to stop and listen to the lived experiences of the people I'm working with. It allows me to help them tap into what works best for them, what feels best for them, and try new things and create new strategies for them to be successful without going, no, it has to be done like this.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. And clearly that is what makes you a successful coach, coaching people around business success, right?
Well, thank you.
Yes. So with that, I have a few more questions for you. This goes to the research that you do around success coaching. We talked about how you measure success with your clients. I'm curious, how do you define what success coaching is? Because I know that we all have different definitions for these words we use all the time. So I'm curious there.
I define it basically the way you just said it, right? I don't get to tell you what's successful, but you folks come to me and we talk about where they are, where they think what they want to be. And in most cases, where they think they want to be isn't actually where they want to be or where they're going to end up. We have to figure out why. Why do you want that? I ask that a lot. I'm like a 4-year-old, but why? But why? Why do you want that? And finally, we get to a real tangible thing that we can create. Coming at me and saying you want to make 7 figures. Okay, but why? What is it that you want to do? How do you want to build your life? What do you want to feel like? Who do you want to touch? Who do you want to help change? All of those fun questions. So this is why I've identified success as a feeling. What does success feel like to you? Not what does it look like? Not what somebody else thinks it is. How does it feel? And that's my goal. My goal is to get you to a place where you feel the way you want to feel. And all of the rest of it falls into place from there.
Yeah, I really like that. Thinking about the audience who tunes into the show, mostly LGBTQ business owners. We have a lot of allies. So thank you, allies. We love you.
Hey, we love our allies.
Yes. So how do you think that is it the same for LGBT business owners in terms, if a number of folks from the audience called you up after today's episode, wanted to work with you. Are there some specific things that, because of your own lived experiences of being a part of the Rainbow family, you would hone in on that 90% of it is similar kind of business stuff, but maybe 10% is dealing with a world that doesn't quite understand people with different sexual orientations or gender identities that aren't straight or cisgender?
Yeah. The way that it shifts is helping people have a better understanding of how they move in the world and how they expect other people to move around them. Often my LGBTQ clients, or even my clients who are of color, what we've discovered, we say all the time that we can't change anyone but ourselves, right? We can't change other people. We can only control ourselves. But the truth of the matter is when we change ourselves, the people around us change. So if you expect people to treat you a certain way because of your sexual orientation or your gender identity or the color of your skin or your race, if you expect it automatically, that's the energy you're going to put out and that's what you're going to get back. So what I help people do is change how they step into a space. That's not to say those things don't exist. It's not to say that you're potentially not discriminated against for any of these reasons. Absolutely, I know these things to be the truth. But you don't have to live in a space where you're constantly expecting it to keep you down,
Mhm.
right? You can change your energy. And when you do that, the people around you will shift and you will see a more positive response. So helping people let go of whatever it is that is holding them back, or they feel, I work with a lot of different organizations and corporations. And I created a program that's called the Empowerment Program. And we piloted this with a diversity and inclusion group, an LGBTQ diversity inclusion group at a large accounting firm. And the takeaway was, when you step into your professional life authentically and as you, people see you for who you are. They can tell that you're not bullshitting them anymore, right? They can tell you bring a more confident energy into the space. They trust you. It changes things and it matters. So yes, that's how I would alter it, and helping people understand that who they are is a better person to present.
Yeah.
Don't try to be who you think somebody wants you to be. Let's be who you are.
Yeah, I love that. Reminds me of the conversation we had almost 2 years ago, where you were just talking about being comfortable in your own skin, and just like the work that it takes to get there. And I think
it's work.
Yeah, it totally is work. And
It's work
not
for
static.
everybody.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that 100%. So just this last question for you before we ask where we can find all of the great stuff that you're doing online. What's next for Vickery and company?
Well, some exciting things. You mentioned my gratitude journal, Shift Your Focus. We're doing an ebook version of that. That's more a book and less a journal. That's coming up. Working on a new sort of evergreen product that folks can take and work through on their own. Very excited for that to come out. And mostly, I just want to be there to connect with people. So the company's goal is to go out and help build a world of more confident, empowered people that do good things. And so we're going to continue to put that positive energy out there in all of the different ways that I can connect. I'm working on a new book, and there's just so many exciting things happening.
Yes. Well, it's awesome watching your business grow and all of the great stuff that you're doing in our little social media windows, which is how I kind of keep my fingers on the pulse of all the awesome stuff that you continue to share and give with communities that are really wanting your business to thrive and succeed. I love this conversation. We'll definitely have you back maybe sooner than in 2 years from now. But yeah, I'm always inspired after chatting with you. So Heather, really appreciate your time. Before we go, can you let us know the best way to find you online so we can stay connected with your work?
Yeah, I'm super easy to find. vickeryandco.com is the easiest way to find me. And from there, you can get to, anything. You can email me. You can set up a time for a 15-minute virtual coffee chat if you want to get to know me better. You want to ask questions. I invite you to do that. On Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, it's at Vickery and Co. So that's all super easy. And if you want to grab, we didn't get a chance to talk about the power of gratitude, but I'm here to tell you it is a powerful, life-changing experience. So if you want to learn more about that, you can grab my gratitude journal on Amazon. Just search Shift Your Focus or Gratitude Journal Shift Your Focus, or put in my name and it'll pop right up, and you can watch things transform. It's pretty powerful.
Yes, I'm a fan of the journals. So I was on Amazon earlier today to check it out. I have to complete my order, but you will definitely have.
And then leave a review. Please,
Yeah.
after you buy it. Please
Trust me. I know.
You're a public author. You know how
I know how important that is. So it's in the works. So definitely check that out, folks. Heather, awesome having you on the show. For Outbosses, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. It is always my privilege to connect with you and so many inspiring outbosses like Heather. So for details from today's conversation, go over to outentrepreneur.com and you'll find all of the great stuff, including where to get Heather's gratitude journal, learn about the Brave Files, her podcast, and of course, all of the amazing work that she's doing coaching fellow business owners just like you. So as a next step, consider subscribing to the podcast, leaving a rating and review in iTunes. That's the best way to stay on top of all of those lists so that I can connect with more amazing LGBT business owners like you, and consider sharing the show with a friend or a loved one. Most importantly, keep being your authentic selves 100% of the time.